Hello, my name's Louise and I'm standing here outside my writing shed to talk to you about planning a novel. What's all this about planning a novel in an afternoon? Is it a gimmick? Is it actually possible? Isn't writing a novel supposed to be really painful and really hard? Well, it is hard work, but it doesn't have to be painful. I've written 2 novels and I'm writing another one at the moment. And I tell you, the thing that has really made the difference with the third one is knowing how to plan. When I wrote the first 2, I kind of made it up as I went along. So I want to show you how to plan a novel in an afternoon. So let's go inside my writing shed and I'll show you how. Hello, well, I'm inside the shed now and I've grabbed my coloured pens and my piece of blank paper and I'm going to show you how to plan a novel in an afternoon. Now I've got a course and a book and blog posts and all sorts on how to write a novel, and I was on Facebook the other day and I was trying to promote my book on novel writing and somebody wrote underneath, well, how do we know how many novels she's actually written? And that's okay because I'm not famous or anything, so she didn't know who I was. But that's kind of the point, although she didn't know it. I have written 2 novels and they've been published by a big press. Here they are, The Haven Home for Delinquent Girls and The Water's Edge. And while I wrote those, I didn't really know very much about planning, even though I did a really prestigious creative writing course. They didn't teach us very much about planning a novel. I didn't really learn about it until I started teaching how to write a novel. And ironically, it was through teaching it that I learned about planning a novel. And now I'm writing another one. The process is so much better because I know about planning. So not only can I give you tacit knowledge about writing a novel because I've done it, I'm also doing it with you because I'm writing one now. So that's who I am. I'm a creative writing tutor and a writer myself, and I want to talk to you about planning a novel in an afternoon, so let's get on with it. First of all, I know I said you could do this in an afternoon, but it is a good idea to prepare. Now, if you're raring to go, you've just had lunch and you're ready to start planning your novel, you can fast forward through this bit. But otherwise, it's good to have at least a week in advance where you can get ready for this. The most important reason is this one. You want to make sure that you do actually have an afternoon free where you can focus. You don't want distractions going on, childcare, suddenly your partner needs to go on a trip to the shop, or things blaring in the background that distract you. So you want to make sure you have actually got some focus time for an afternoon. The other reason that you might want to prepare at least a week in advance is this one. Not sure if you can read my handwriting there, but you're going to try out different writing spaces, different writing times, and work out what your energy's like. So are you better off writing in the spare room at midnight when you're wide awake? Or are you better off writing in a cafe at lunchtime when you're feeling really mellow? Are you the sort of person that likes getting up early in the morning to write with a cup of tea on the sofa or outside in the garden? So doing this a week in advance means you can experiment with the spaces, the times and the energy. And you can find the optimum one for you. A third reason is this. Now, just like painters who might go outside to observe directly from life, or might get somebody to sit in front of them so that they can paint them, writers use close observation of life. Now, they might not have somebody actually sitting in front of them while they write about them, but they could sit in a place and write about it. In fact, I've done that myself in the short story collection that I published recently. I went to places and actually wrote about them. So we use a similar technique. Now, you'd need longer than a week to get really good at it, but you could practice close observation from life, close observation of life, a week in advance. If, say, you went to a cafe every lunchtime, if that was one of your optimum spaces, and you were watching people and you were using all your senses to observe what was going on around you, that's really going to help, because then you can fictionalize those places, you can fictionalize some of the gestures, mannerisms, bits of dialogue that you heard while you were doing that. So these are really three good reasons to prepare in advance. Make sure that you can actually focus for an afternoon, try out different spaces, times and your energy, and to get a bit of practice in when it comes to close observation from life. Now, if you're thinking about writing a novel, you've probably been doing close observation already. You've probably got some ideas about how people behave and so on. But spend at least a week doing that. It's going to help you when it comes to creating characters. So once you're there, ready, you've got your focus time, you're in your ideal space, you've got no distractions around you, you've got your afternoon free. What do you do next? Well, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to brainstorm a list of places. Just any places, any that come into your head. Just make a list. There's no right or wrong. Just keep going until you've got lots and lots of them. Now, don't start with, the three most obvious ones and then stop, because that's not going to get you anywhere. You don't have to show this to anyone, so you might as well use your imagination and keep going. Don't worry about being judged. Try and fill up the page. Try and generate ideas. Use this as a warm-up exercise as well. Write down lots of places. And if you already know where you want to set your novel, write about places within that place, so specific places within that. If you don't, then just brainstorm lots and lots of places. So, hotel, bar, swimming pool, cafe, boat, beach. You can probably tell I live by the seaside. School. Right, so I did that in a minute or so. If you kept going, you'd end up with loads and loads of these. So don't skip the brainstorm part. Don't just come up with a few and then go on to the next step. Come up with lots, because it really helps to get into that creative mindset and to get past the judge that tells you you're being silly and you should stop now and who are you to write a novel. Everybody has that judgmental voice, by the way. So keep going until you've stretched yourself a bit. But this is the next stage. I want you to get more specific. So imagine this is, let's say, a vegan hotel for hipsters. Can't spell hipsters. Oh yes I can. Hipsters, if that looks right. For hipsters, it's on a beach somewhere. Let's say somewhere hot for now. A vegan hotel for hipsters on a beach somewhere hot. I'm just making this up off the top of my head, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to get more specific about this. So this is a trendy bar. A trendy bar in downtown Manhattan. You can see how that kind of brings it to life a bit more than just saying bar. Okay, so I've got a grimy swimming pool in need of a refit in a condemned hotel in Madrid. I've got a cafe, what in the UK you would call a caf. It's a breakfast cafe serving builders, commuters, parents with small children, the sort of place you could go and get bacon and egg and beans and fried breads for $5.99. Okay, my next one is boats. So I was imagining a luxury passenger liner moored offshore somewhere, one of those gorgeous boats with the swimming pools on that you have to pay thousands of pounds to go on. And my school is a school in Hackney in East London. Again, these things are making hotel, bar, swimming pool, cafe, boat, beach, school much more specific. And I've done this really quickly. So again, treat it as a brainstorming exercise, no right or wrong answer. Just get your places more specific than they were. And if you've already gone to the specific level, challenge yourself to get even closer, even more specific. Give us more details about it. Don't skip this step. So this is another brainstorm, and it's one that you're going to come back to later, so don't skip this step either, because it helps to do this before you know the purpose of it. So you kind of trick your brain into being really creative. and then try and structure it later rather than being creative and structuring at the same time, which is sometimes quite hard to do because they seem like two different mental tasks. One's quite analytical and one's creative. So do the creative bit now and then you can come back to this later. So what I want you to do is I want you to simply make a list of problems. Make a list of problems. So things that could go wrong. And this can range to tiny little problems like a dripping tap, for instance, which of course can be really annoying, right through to a meteorite just struck the earth. So something truly catastrophic. And of course everywhere in between. It's probably easier to think of the most catastrophic or the least catastrophic, but try and think of some along the way as well. Now if it helps, think about these problems occurring in the space, well, the spaces that you just brainstormed, but they can actually be generic problems at this stage in the planning. So I'll have a go at it. It might help to do this as a mind map. If you haven't seen a mind map before, you have a central idea. Now you can make that central idea as beautiful and decorative as you like. You could turn that into a book, you could make a plant, or you could turn it into a picture of the sun. Depends how artistic you want to get. When you do a rough mind map, you can just start with a circle. You can beautify it later. Mine's certainly not going to be beautiful because I'm going to do it quickly, but it's up to you how beautiful you want to make it. Okay, but I'm going to put some different coloured branches in just because I've got these pens. Because using different colours really does stimulate your creativity. And don't take my word for it because apparently that's been scientifically proven. So I'm just going to put some branches in here. And these are all problems. Now, I could have turned that into a grey cloud to make it look more problematic or had lightning come out of it. But I didn't because I'm doing it quickly. But you can be quite dramatic with how you tell your mind that's what you want it to create, as it were. Okay, so let's say, well, I had my dripping tap idea, didn't I? Okay, toast is burnt. Someone's followed me home. Dropped car keys in puddle. So very quickly I've come up with several problems. Bedroom on fire, someone followed me home, broken window, dripping tap, toast burnt, lost memory, dropped car keys in the puddle, identity stolen. I'm just putting random problems down here. I want to challenge you to come up with 25. I want you to keep going for longer. You don't have to think about it, just write down problems. Severe ones, small ones, somewhere in between. Now if you find you've got all small ones at the end of the process, try and make those worse. If you find you've got all big problems at the end of the process, loads of houses burning down and meteorites falling out of the sky, try and think of some smaller ones until you have a range of different kinds of problems. All right, do that first before moving on. By the magic of television, I've turned my piece of paper over and got myself a cup of tea. So what are you going to do next on your afternoon? Okay, well, this is where your close observations from life are really going to kick in. And if you didn't get time to prepare, then think back to times when you have observed people, and I'm not talking about writing about real people, I'm talking about fictionalising them, but thinking about how people react in certain situations, thinking about people's mannerisms and gestures and how they speak and how they interact with each other and how they communicate and how you've seen people do that during your life. Because I want you to come up with 3 characters who live in one of the places that you came up with in your brainstorm. Choose the place that you like the sound of the most. Choose the place that intrigues you the most. And if you can't decide, repeat this a few times until it's the characters who are intriguing you, and then pick one place and set of characters to go with. And you actually only have to commit for now, because after all, this is an interesting exercise. You're going to spend an afternoon doing it. You could spend another afternoon planning a novel in a different way. This isn't the only afternoon you're ever going to have. So You don't have to commit to it now, but you could do if you wanted to. This might trigger something really interesting for you. So pick a place, and there's going to be 3 characters. And they either live in this place, or they work there, or they're associated with it somehow. But it helps you make them associated with it now, so they're inhabiting it now, rather than thinking back to the time when because then you get into tense problems. And although that's okay when you're actually writing the thing, you can work it out and have somebody looking back on their life, that's fine. But for now, because we're just starting, have them inhabiting it now. It's much easier to think about and imagine. As if it's kind of playing out in front of you in a film. You can see them there and they're doing stuff in the place. So I want you to take the place. Now imagine you had one of Jupiter's moons as your place. And it's a very volcanic moon. And I think one of Jupiter's moons is Io, so I'm going to call it Io. Of course, I could do some research and change that later if I wanted to, or I could just make up a name later, but it doesn't really matter at this stage. And I'm going to imagine that there's a settlement on there and it's a mining community. How can I make this worse? How can I raise the stakes a bit? Well, let's imagine people get sent there. They get sent to prison there. And that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go through your places or work with the place that you've decided to go for and think of why there might be a sense of unease there, why things might be difficult. And that's why it helps to get specific. So, for instance, in my vegan hipster hotel on the beach, it all seems wonderful, but all the staff hate all the clientele. And then there's a real sense of dis-ease, or unease rather. In my mining community on one of Jupiter's moons, well, it's a prison, and let's imagine that the people running that prison do not treat the inmates very well. Let's imagine in my Trendy Bar in Manhattan that the manager is a bully. Okay, and then the next stage is I want you to think about a particular person, a particular character that they are targeting. So it's not just people get sent to prison on Io to this mining community and they're treated badly. But my character I'm interested in, let's call her Marina. Marina gets sent to Io to work in this mining corporation, and it's a prison. And she's been sent there unfairly because she's been sent there, let's say, for a crime her boyfriend committed. And she's being treated badly by the prison staff. Now, the way to make that even more specific would be to come up with a character on the other side. The prison staff character, if you like, so I'm treating them quite generically at the moment. Let's imagine somebody called Sally works in our Trendy Bar in downtown Manhattan, and she's being bullied by her manager. You see how that makes it more personal? So I'd like you to work with your place, come up with a reason why there's a sense of unease, and then make it personal to a person. Now again, you don't have to commit to anything here, so pick a random name. And then think of something difficult that could be happening to them in that environment because of that environment. Because that's going to be important for the next stage. And if you've got a range of places because you weren't quite sure, you can come up with a sense of unease for each one, and then a character that's being treated badly somehow or is involved in that somehow. Give them a problem, give them something that's wrong, something that they need to sort out. But it's not somebody holding a gun at them. It's a general problem that's been going on for a while. It's rumbling underneath, if you like. So you've got one character, this character that's being bullied by the manager in the Trendy Bar in Manhattan, or my person that's been sent to my mining corporation on Io unfairly and is being treated badly by the prison guards. So you've got this one person, you've given them a name, write that down, and then I want you to come up with 2 other people that inhabit that place or live there or have something to do with it. So it could be one of the prison guards, it could be the manager of the bar that I was talking about, Okay, so somebody else that's associated with it. And because you've thought of the place, let's get my tea. Because you've thought of the place, that should generate characters for you. You don't have to go for the obvious, but also you could go for the obvious, but then make that individual person interesting. So I'd like you to spend some time creating your characters. Then what I want you to do is I want you to take your place and write 300 words about it. And I want you to take each character in turn and write about them doing something, can be anything you like, doing something in the place that you've chosen. And say you weren't sure and you chose 3 places, the hipster hotel for vegans where the staff hate the clientele, or the luxury liner that's moored off somewhere beautiful and costs thousands of pounds, or your bar in Manhattan. Say you'd got 3 of them, write 300 words about each one, and invent at least one character for each one, write 300 words. This can be free writing, speed writing. Don't edit as you go. Simply get the words down. Time yourself if you like. Set a timer for half an hour, however long it normally takes you to write 300 words. Just write quickly and then try and make your decision on your place and your character based on that. That's if you're hedging your bets. Otherwise, 300 words about each of the characters and about the place, and then you're going to know so much more about them already. So now you should have a place and 3 characters who are inhabiting that place. Somehow they're connected to it or they live there. And you should have got more specific about it. You should have got to know them a little bit. And there's a rumbling sense of unease going on underneath all of this. And this is when a big problem happens. Now, I said before you wanted rumbling underneath, not a gun to someone's head. Well, this is the gun to someone's head type problem. Okay, this is more of a sudden thing, something that intervenes in their world, something suddenly difficult rather than a rumbling underneath difficult. So 2 different kinds of problems. So where the clientele may historically hate all the staff in the hipster hotel and the staff hate the clientele, that's rumbling underneath. If one of them was mugged and killed, that's a sudden dramatic happening, right? That's what I'm after. This gets called the inciting incident, by the way, but you don't have to worry too much about that. You simply have to come up with a big problem that could occur in your world. Now, seeing as I've been writing about Jupiter's moon, I could decide there's a massive volcanic eruption and my main character gets trapped somewhere. So that would be a big problem. Or my Trendy Bar in Manhattan where I've got my manager bullying my member of staff. The manager gets arrested, the manager gets murdered and that member of staff gets arrested for his murder. You see what I mean? It's a sudden happening, a sudden problem. So I've got Marina. So I've got Io, my volcanic moon, and I've got my character Marina. Now she is wrongly sent to prison on Io and she's being bullied by the prison guards. Life is pretty bad for her. And then there's a volcanic eruption and she's trapped. That's my big problem. Now, when a problem occurs to ordinary human beings in everyday life, we may have the tendency to sit on the sofa and eat crisps and draw the curtains, watch telly for a bit and feel sorry for ourselves. Obviously not if we're trapped on one of Jupiter's moons, but you get the idea. We might kind of be a bit introverted and sulk for a bit. Well, a hero in a traditionally written story can't do that. In other words, they're more proactive than an everyday person would be. In contemporary fiction, that's what makes them a hero. They actually do something about it. But what are they actually going to do something about? Well, because there's a problem, Marina is trapped, for example, or Sally's been arrested for murder in this trendy Manhattan bar. Because there's a problem, there now needs to be some kind of solution to the problem. So the character tries to solve the problem. And it helps if you write down how they try to solve the problem. Now, they might be naive, they might be stupid, They might not really know what they want. They might be totally barking up the wrong tree. So this isn't objectively what you would need to do to solve that problem. It's what the character tries to do or thinks they want in order to solve the problem. There's a subtle difference there. So what's she going to do? She's going to burrow further into the volcano. Now I'm making this up off the top of my head. You've got the whole afternoon, so you can think about this stage more carefully. You don't have to do this really quickly, but sometimes it's self-evident what they're going to try and do. She's going to try and escape. Well, she can't go out one way, so she's going to try and go out the other way. So what does she want? She wants to escape. Doesn't just want to escape from the volcano. She wants to escape from the whole mining settlement and the prison and the horrible life she's now being forced to lead unfairly. Now it's quite important that it's unfair, because otherwise we might not feel sorry for her. Now we're still in the planning stages, right? We're not writing this story yet. We haven't even committed to writing to it. We're coming up with interesting ideas to see if we want to use them. Now somebody's going to help her and somebody's going to hinder her. So you've got to decide what character or who is going to try and get in her way, and you've got to decide who's going to try and help her. Now, remember I said that it was Marina's boyfriend who actually committed the crime that got her sent there. So what if he's stolen a spaceship and is on his way to rescue her? What if someone else is trapped down there with her and is trying to prevent her from escaping for some reason? If you've started to develop your characters, you might know the answers to some of those questions. By the way, you can also introduce other characters at this stage. There might be, say, a wise friend that they could go to, somebody who's going to impart advice, or something very specific that they need. Another character you might want to introduce, or you could combine with one of the other characters, is a love interest. You don't have to worry too much about that right now, but it's possible that you've got these other characters there, so if you want to flesh them out, then you can, or just write down some notes about how you will flesh them out at a later date. Remember, we're in the planning stages. So what happens next? Well, you've got a sequence of things using cause and effect. Something else goes wrong and your hero responds somehow, and then something else goes wrong and your hero responds somehow, and so on and so forth, until we get to a point of climax. Now, if you know anything about narrative structure, then you probably already know about that. This is the middle of the story if you're using a 3-act structure. But how on earth do you fill 25, 50, 75,000 words with just this idea of problem and response? The advice is fairly vague. So this is where your list of problems is going to come in. I want you to have a look at that list of problems that you brainstormed earlier and go, okay, now I'm going to put them in order of seriousness, from the least serious to the most serious. And then I want you to see if you can translate those problems into the middle of your plan. There's some of them aren't going to work. Some of them will need rewriting, like my dripping tap isn't going to work in the middle of a volcano. But I could turn it into something that's equally annoying and trivial at the same time, and could turn into something that would gradually drive you mad, like maybe the sound of dripping water that annoys her so much because she's trying to sleep and she's delirious from being injured, and then she realises that water must be coming from somewhere, so it leads to the next bit of the story. So there we go, I've translated one of my seemingly trivial problems into something relevant to my story. So that's what I want you to do now. And if you want to add any problems in that you think, well, I've thought of this specific problem, now I've come up with my world and my characters, then that's absolutely fine. And I've got a download for you. It's basically headings of different kinds of problems, from niggles right through to catastrophes. I'd like you to see if you could come up with something under each of those headings. If you can't, don't worry, use your own. But it can be really good as a starting point. It can make you think, you can get your creative brain going. So, and I've also arranged them in what I think is order of seriousness, so it helps you go from fairly trivial problem to the point of climax in your middle. So I'd like you to go through 25, simply number down your paper. And if you've got big pieces of paper like this, you could spread them out on the floor and do this big and draw pictures with it. Because again, pictures, colours, making it big, making it bold can really help you think creatively. Whereas writing really small and neat and editing as you go or in really small font can actually feel quite restrictive. So if this is something that helps you, then go for it. Right, so I would need 2 more bits of paper. And I'm going to write out my 25 problems, 25 things that go on. Now, if you're not very good at sequencing things as you go, and let's face it, who is, just write down your problems based on the exercise you did with the handout you've downloaded, based on the brainstorm you did earlier before you knew this was what this was about. Just write down a list of problems and try and get them to go from least serious to most serious by the time you get to number 25. Then spend about an hour poring over it, going, how could that problem lead to this problem, and editing your list of 25 until you've got to 25 problems that could happen in the middle of your novel. And then you want to know how it's resolved. Remember, your character was trying to achieve something at the start. My character, Marina, was trying to escape, and her boyfriend was on his way in a spaceship, and someone was trying to stop her. And there was potentially a wise friend to help her. I could state that. I could write down, I want to escape. That's a fairly straightforward statement. So that's what she wanted. But the point of resolution at the end, is that story goal resolved or not? Does she escape or not? It doesn't have to be a happy ending, but you need to know whether she's going to get there, what's going to happen. But there could be some kind of twist. So actually, it's not resolved, but something better happens. Or it is resolved, but actually that causes another difficulty. And if you've gone through all 25 problems and you've gone from trivial all the way through to climactic, you've got a sense of how the story's going to flow now. So you're going to know what needs tying up. So you want to make sure all those threads are tied up. Remember, this is still the plan. You're not writing it right now. So if you don't have the answers, write yourself a question. Write down something that you need to research, that you need to think about. That's fine. You don't have to solve all the answers now. And remember, you've got more than one character. So each of those characters is going to have something that they want during this novel, that they want to achieve. So you need to tie up those threads for all of them. And if you've got a love interest, that's probably going to form your subplot. It might not, but it probably will. So is that resolved? Is that tied up at the end? A lot of people are very surprised when they find out that almost all Agatha Christie stories have a love interest that's either resolved or not by the end. And if you read a couple of her books, you'll notice it. But we're often so bound up in trying to solve the murder and work out the puzzle that we don't notice that it's actually a trope in her novels, and she uses it as a subplot very successfully. So have a look at that if you want an example of a classic subplot. So there you have it. You've planned a novel in an afternoon. How did it feel? Well, the good thing about planning actually is that it needs to be flexible. And I say it's a good thing because once you've worked out how to make your plan flexible, it's going to be so helpful to you during the novel writing process. So how do you make your plan flexible? Keep more than one draft of it so you don't feel like you have to make it perfect every single time. Plan time during the writing process to review your plan, to go over it. So I used to think that you had to plan first and then write, or write first and then plan. Actually, you do both at the same time, not in exactly the same time, the same space, but you write and then you might have a bit of time later that week to go over your plan. So the two are actually happening hand in hand, and that's why your plan needs to be flexible, but it's also a really great aspect of planning. So it turns out you don't have to be a planner or a pantser, that is flying by the seat of your pants. You can actually write intuitively, but then come back to your plan and change it and be flexible with it. The other way that you can be flexible with your plan is to carry a notebook with you, and every time you think of an idea for your novel, you've got sections in your notebook in which to write, and then you don't have to keep everything in your head until the next time you come back to your plan, because it can be very easy to forget about a plan. There's lots more ideas for planning a novel in my Udemy course on finding time to write a novel, so I hope you'll check that out. It's been great working with you. Good luck, and let me know how you get on.